Hello, welcome to Women Winning with Money. On today's episode of Women Winning with Money, we will be talking on something very important that we shy away from, that we say, "Ọlọ́run má jẹ́," and that is estate planning, will, and trust. My name is Olufunke Adetunji, your host, and I have my friends here that you all know them very well that will be discussing this topic together. What is estate planning? What is will? What is trust? A lot of people, we see it in home video, they will say, okay, one fair car will, and you see everything dramatic, and you're just wondering what is happening. Let me start with this story. When I was young, there was this people that we lived together, our landlord, and they had this big estate, plenty wives, plenty children, and immediately that Baba died. This Baba was, by all standard, then was a billionaire. But immediately that Baba died, the business went down, everything went down. The children were dying one after the other, unfortunately, because there was chaos. There was no proper will in place. So what is a will? A will is just telling where your property, your assets, where they go to. Estate planning is the process of putting your will and your trust in place. So what's the difference between a trust and a will? A trust means that you are appointing somebody, which is the trustee, to manage your properties, to tell them that this belongs to this, that belongs to that. And will has all this legal process. He has to go through the court. But trustee don't have to. Sometimes it could be more expensive than using a will, but the advantage is you can even use a trustee while you're alive. That you tell them, okay, my first wife gets this, my second wife gets this every month. So the difference majorly between a will and the trustee is going through the probate, and you can use a trustee while you're alive. So what is estate planning? Estate planning is just the process of putting your trust or your will in place, period. No big deal. And we don't have to shy away from it. We have to do it. So Temi will be telling us, why do women delay estate planning and what are the risks involved?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. People shy away from estate planning because they will say, why are you talking about that? It's not, you are bringing bad luck, you are bringing, negativity by talking about death. And that's the reason why most people don't. They don't want to talk about it, they don't want to think about it, and they don't want to plan about it. Another reason is people will say that, well, it is people that have plenty properties that will plan, that will have will. How much do I have? What do I have? I remember one of my aunts, she died as a retired teacher. She had just one bungalow, say, and it's, some savings. With three children, she had lost her husband, years before she died. And guess what? The three children started, fighting about who gets the house, who lives in the house, how do we manage the savings. The bank actually, froze the account because of some things. There was nobody to actually go to the bank. The woman did not do anything, no will, no trustee, nothing before she died. And apart from the emotional thing that comes up if you don't plan your estate or you don't have a will, there are other things that may happen, like losing your funds to the bank. You may never have access to it if your children are not really educated. You can even, your children may be separated, fighting because of one bungalow. Now think about people that even have a lot of properties and will, you don't have a will and you die. What happens? We all pray that we would live long, but then it is important to also plan. What happens if you live longer than you think? I don't want to be negative because we will say let's not be negative. So it is important. Part of financial planning for women is learn how to actually have your will, plan your estate. Most people will think, like we mentioned in one of our episodes, that women always leave their planning, their finances, and all of that to their husband. And when they lose their husband or they are separated and all, they still relax. They feel like, wow, I don't want to do this. I don't want to think about it. I will live long. Some people will say, I'll reap the fruit of my labor. I'll be the one to, live long to be the mother to my children. We all pray to be that. But then, whatever happens, make sure you have it. It's not difficult. It is just about putting the right things in place. And if you don't know how to do it, get an expert. That's why we are here. We can advise you on what to do. Don't think that no, I don't have enough. I have just one bungalow. I have just few savings. My investment is not much, and I can't plan. I feel that with this little thing that I've said, you will think about it, and with whatever Jumi and Lola will be saying, you will think about it and start.
You said something that get an expert, which I totally agree with you. And because of that, I will direct my next question to our lawyer in the house. So what are the documents you think a woman should have in place, the things she should have in place to prevent problem when that happens, and of course to be able to do a proper estate planning?
Thank you very much. The thing is, every single document that you have ever touched in your life as a woman is important for the planning of your estate.
Wow.
A lot of time when you're enrolling for anything and you're filling that form, there's a next of kin slot in your form. Now, the name of the person you put in the next of kin, please let us put it on record. It does not mean the person is inheriting anything. It just means that when anything happens to your relationship with that particular person and they cannot reach you, who should they reach out to? Now, there are times when I personally, and then when we spoke about shares, in one of our episodes, I found out that I bought shares when I was in 400, 500 level in school and forgot everything about it. Now, what happens is that those shares will be lost and your dividends will never come to anybody if you did not indicate a next of kin, if you do not have anybody who even knows you have shares, you're not keeping records, and you're not noting, excuse me, and you're not noting who your next of kin is for what. Especially as women, throughout life, our next of kin tends to change. Sometimes, as single ladies, our next of kin was our dad, our mom, our sibling, and then you get married, and the right thing we have been told is that your next of kin should be your spouse, and then you change it to your spouse. But all the documents you filled before you got married, you never went back to change your next of kin. And then let's say something happens, that relationship turns sour, you separate or you divorce, and then you switch back or you get somebody else as your next of kin. The places where you have submitted your spouse as your next of kin, what happens? So if you have any assets, the people who actually should have access to your properties or your assets will never know you have such, because they'll be calling the wrong person in relation to that. So one first lesson we must take in relation to documentation is, if you need to submit your next of kin, if the relationship you are building is with a financial institution or you are buying shares in a company, one thing you must make sure you do is maintain your next of kin. And if the document is important, you have given the next of kin that you have lost contact with, or in some cases that has died. I mean, many of us, when we grow old, our parents die, but they are the ones whose phone numbers and email addresses we dropped as next of kin. We never go back to change it. That is something that women do and then they don't pay attention to. There's a particular lady who, her husband was an next of kin. The relationship got muddled up, but they never separated or divorced. But she knew that he was no longer protecting her interests because she knew the other wives. And she never changed her next of kin. So the fund standing to her credit in the bank was applied to the training of the other women's children and not her children, because the husband felt she had indoctrinated her children and they will not serve him in the future, they won't take care of him in the future. And so he used that money to take care of other people's children. Now, you see, the thing is, in your children's accounts, it's the parents that manage. You are the guardian. So when you're filling that form as the guardian and you are the sole guardian of your children, when you die, it's your next of kin they would contact. If you are not paying attention to who your next of kin is, it affects everything that pertains to who will know about the existence of that thing. Now, coming to property purchase, many of us, when we are buying property, we buy with our spouses and then we put Mr. and Mrs. their surname. This is also something we need to rectify when it comes to documents. Now, title documents to anything, fixed deposits, if you're buying real estate, anything that is a document of title that you're buying with somebody else is a documentary thing to note. As a woman, always make sure that your first name, if there's space, put your second name, because we have many Tolu Taibos. They are not all Tolu, Lope, Abolore Taiwo. Do you understand? So even if the first name is the same, the second name might not be the same. Paying attention to putting all your names in all the documents of assets that pertains to you matters for estate planning. Why? There will be no confusion as to who owns it. So if it is Mr. and Mrs. Tamedo, Mr. Tamedo can marry another Mrs. Tamedo down the line, and then we will need to prove which one of them it was. It does not matter that all the money came from me. Well, it will be story for the gods. You will not even be there to prove it if we're talking about estate planning and you are gone. It will just show that is the second wife is there will be, or the person he married after his first wife died. So arguments will come up in relation to who owns the property. So when you are buying an asset, whatever type of asset it is, with somebody else, it could even be your sibling, please make sure that your first name and if possible your second name reflects in that document. Like Funke already mentioned, a trust is good because it becomes operative while you're alive. And then you use a trust instead of a will because it bypasses that 10%. 10% of anything you own will go to the government if you use a will. If you don't have a will, 10% of everything you own will go to the government because they will have to get a letter of administration to administer all the properties you own when you are gone. However, if you use a trust, up every time you buy something, you invest in something, you create something, you update your trust and you give your trustee the power to administer it in a certain way. Many people say 20% of profits or income to my firstborn, 30 to the second, 15 you can even create an income for yourself while you are alive and then say, okay, whenever you are gone, that income should be used for charity or posted. You decide how you want your assets to be distributed with a trust. With a will, you do the same. However, 10% of everything you have put in that will is going to the government, but you would have to appoint at least 2 executors who would monitor how that is applied. Many people, same thing with appointing a next of kin. You have drafted your will, you appointed an executor. The executor has died. You did not remember that you should change your executor during your lifetime. Now you're gone, and then there's only one person, and one person cannot be an executor. And then there now becomes a struggle of who will next executor be. The executor cannot be a beneficiary when it's a will. So one of your relatives who wants something, who you have left something to, cannot be an executor under that arrangement. So we must always pay attention to all these little details every time you're acquiring an asset and filling a form that requires you to put your next of kin. Please make sure that it is somebody you trust. I'm not saying the person you want to inherit. It's somebody you trust and somebody you are sure will use that asset or give that asset to the people you've decided to spend your life raising. Many of us, especially women, we have obligations. We have upward, sideways, downwards. We have friends we support. I know many women who have friends who cannot earn as much as they do earn, who supports them. They give them food and money from time to time. You have aunties, uncles, parents, you have children and adopted children. All these people need to be catered for in your plan. It could be a trust, it could be a will, but carry people along and always know the way trusts, wills, even letters of administration work. There must be at least 2 people you trust to execute what you want. Women always need support systems. Have a support system. The way Funke is breathing down, I'm sure
Yes,
she's
sir.
remembering many things.
Yes, I
and thinking
am.
about her life. But I think for every document, when it relates to an asset, you must pay particular attention. And the way your name is written, who is your next of kin, and then have an arrangement. Will, trust, anything. Have an arrangement to make sure that your dependents are taken care of.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, our lawyer. That's a detailed one. And you know what? I've picked something that I'm going to work on immediately also. Okay, so Dr. Lola, a lot of women will say, I don't even have anything. So how can we start as a woman, even when I don't have a property? How can we start estate planning?
Well, a lot has been said. The first thing I would say is not something to shy away from. It's not something to be secretive about, or it's not something to dread. People will say, I'm still just 40, I'm 50. You're telling me. No, it's not. Just know that it is something that you have in mind to put in place for yourself and for your future. When we talk about future, we're talking about your dependents. So it's important that we should not shy away from it or think negativity when we're talking about estate planning. So that's the first thing that women should know, that as soon as you start acquiring assets, it is the best time to start estate planning. I'll put it that way. So as soon as we start acquiring assets, it's the best time to start. Now, Jumi talked about documentation. It is something that is very key for women or for anybody. The way names are written, very, very important. I remember there was a particular form I filled for driver's license, as simple as driver's license. And the person that was keying it in arranged my name in a different way. And I said, I'm sorry, I cannot, please, you have to change. He said, you need to pay another 6,250. I said, I don't mind paying, but please, I want it written properly so that there will be no mix up. So please, that's another thing that women need to really, really take cognizance of, the way our names are written. Jimmy has talked about next of kin. We have to, pay attention to all those things. And I would say that when we put next of kin, it will not be bad to even inform the next of kin. That's why it will be people that we trust. Let them know. We see people that ordinary access to their apps, their children, or maybe a child don't know. And when something happens, everybody is stranded. At least you should have one or two persons that you can trust. So when we put people as our next of kin, please, there's some information that we should not, keep and say, no. I saw someone of 75. He was not feeling too well. The wife actually left work to stay with him for like 2 weeks when he was on oxygen. And he needed his balance. And he came to say he wants to get his balance. That information, he felt that he cannot let his wife know. And in my mind, I was like, 75, 2 weeks, oxygen. I was just trying to, and it sounded funny. Please, let's, as much as possible, let's inform our next of kin. Now, we can also start by having a trust account. There are organizations that you can open a trust account with. You can open, several of them. When you reach out to us, we can, give you recommendations. So you can start with opening a trust account. Now we have federal government has gone to the extent of saying, some people say I don't have a lot of money and you're telling me to plan for my estate. You can actually invest in savings bond as low as 5,000 naira. Now we have some organizations, we call them the real estate investment trust organizations, that you can, little by little, put funds in it for your retirement, for your that time when you are no longer. And of course, there's no assets. I will say it again. They will definitely ask for a next of kin. So it's important that you're also mindful of wherever you put it. And women, as much as possible, wherever we put, let's not, I will say it again, let's not shy away from giving out information, because we don't know when it will be needed. I came in contact with 2 children that they lost both parents. But it was easy for them to access funds because, especially the mother, had told them, this is how you can access my funds, this is how you can do this is how you can do that. And it made it easy for them. And I remember meeting someone, I think when he was 40 or 50, he said on his 50th birthday, he made his children signatories to his account and said, A can sign a loan and 2 Bs can sign when A is gone, so that the children will not be stranded. So as much as possible, no matter how much we have, once we start having assets, let's have a trusted next of kin. Let's release as much information as we can so that in case of anything, there's somebody that can.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lola. Okay, our lawyer.
Yes,
I know, right?
So, well, I just observed that we are all bankers. So let me quickly talk about that, making signatories to your accounts. If the person, I'm the lawyer, they were the marketers, and, I'm the control person. So if you make your children signatories to your account, they can sign out money if you are sick.
Yeah.
They cannot sign out money if you die, unless the bank does not know you are dead. In which case, if they've been signing out money before you passed on, they can always sign out money. But the minute they know the bank knows you're dead, they will place a lien on that account and nobody will be able to access your funds unless they come with a will or a letter of administration. Except if that account forms part of the trust that is being administered on your behalf, since a trust can exist while you are alive. Now, another thing is to avoid that, If it is a joint account and the person is a signatory and either signatory can sign, they will continue to sign whether you're dead or alive. That is another thing. Another thing I wanted to mention is that you do not use a minor as your second signatory. You do not use a minor as your next of kin. Many women, as soon as they have children, begin to use their children as next of kin. If your child is less than 18, that child cannot be your next of kin. To prevent your child from not being able to access your property when you die, some people buy assets in the name of their children. You cannot buy an asset in the name of your child. Your child lacks the capacity to contract. You have to contract as their next friend. You buy the property on their behalf, and then you can state it in the agreement that you bought it for that child. When that child is mature of age at 18, they can now begin to own the property because you constructed the contract like that. Meaning that when you are buying land, don't use receipts. Get a lawyer. Write a proper agreement that shows who's the owner of the land. If you are buying as a next friend because your child is small, buy as a next friend. But please note that if you bought in the name of your child while your child was small, they can contest it that this child could not have bought that property because he was not old enough to buy property at that time. So don't put your children at the risk of losing the things you are acquiring for them by going through it with the wrong documentation. When in doubt, talk to a lawyer.
Can you hear that, next friend? So there is so much to learn on this topic, and that is why I'm going to encourage all our listeners that if you have any question, send us messages, chat us up, send us email. We are waiting for you. Please, it's very important. And I want to add to it, when you are doing all these things, don't do it with sadness like fear, death. Do it with joy that comes with when everything flows. That is not a beautiful home of commotion where there is so much riches and there is commotion. Do it with joy that I know that when I leave, everything will work smoothly. So until we see you again on our next episode, bye.